Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I'm on. Can I?
Perfect. Yes. I'll do the introduction and we can start.
Okay.
So, dear participants, you're very much welcome to today's webinar. And we are going to hear.
Dans cette session,
we are going to hear from
nous allons écouter Professeur Mississi.
We have translation in
Nous
French.
avons
We have
traduction en
French speakers
français.
online.
Si
Please
nous
go
avons
to language and choose French.
Choisissez donc la
And
chaîne
remember to mute
française.
the original translation if you opt for English or French.
Si vous
And
optez
some
pour
details about our speaker for the day. He's the professor of psychiatry and former chair of the Department of Psychiatry at Makerere University College of Health Sciences and the senior consultant at Molago National Referral Hospital, which is also a teaching hospital, and also to Ministry of Health Uganda. He has spent a lot of time training psychiatrists at Makerere University, majorly at postgraduate level. And this is a renowned academician, researcher, and clinician to many of us. I see a hand raised by Glenn. Do you have anything to say before I give our speaker of the day the floor? Glenn? I think it's a mistake. Professor Mississi, you're welcome to deliver the presentation on grief and bereavement in children. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Namisango. Please check the queue and answer. There is some message they sent you there.
Professor, you're welcome.
And can I share my slides?
Est-ce que je peux partager mes diapos?
Looks like we lost Pro, did we?
I'm on, and I'm sharing slides. Is that okay? Hello?
Yes, we can see your screen. You can put it in presentation mode.
Yes, I am trying to do that. Let me see, where do I click now?
You can click up on starting from current slide on your left.
Start video, current slide, remote.
Now you can click on presentation mode from current slide.
I don't see that. That should be on the bar.
Prof, is there a challenge?
Yes, I am on, but I want to make presentation mode on the slide. Except I don't see where it says that.
Le présentateur a un problème de présenter donc la présentation dans le mode de présentation. Il est en train de chercher comment.
Can I just go on?
Est-ce que je peux avancer comme ça?
Because I don't see it. I don't see that.
Je ne vois pas donc l'option.
That looks like a glass of wine. Well, maybe we can begin.
On peut commencer quand même.
Can you click on top? On top you have format painter, you have paste, then you have from current slide. If you press on that, it will go to presentation mode.
I don't from current slide. Okay, I press on from current slide. from beginning. Next slide. Yeah, here we go. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this invitation for me to present to you
Cette invitation pour
something on
présenter
bereavement in children.
sur le chagrin et deuil.
Prof, my apologies. Before you start, the translator needs to go to his translation because he's speaking, I think, in the English channel. Eugene, I think you are in the English channel.
No, I'm in the French channel. There might be a technical problem, but I'm on the French channel.
Okay, thank you.
So, shall I go on?
Yes, Prof.
Thank you. So we are going to be talking about grief and bereavement in
Nous allons
children.
parler de chagrin.
Grief is
Chagrin
defined as the psychological reaction of the survivor
comme une réaction
following the loss.
psychologique du survivant
It is the stage of
donc de quelqu'un
grieving
qui a
by
perdu le sien.
someone by death.
Chagrin est le temps dans lequel la
The
personne
grieving
est
process
après
is a
avoir
subjective
perdu le
feeling
sien.
precipitated by the death of a loved one.
Chagrin est subjectif, est un sentiment subjectif qui est causé par l'amour de quelqu'un que vous aimez. I lost Prof. I don't know if he's still speaking. If can you let me if you are still hearing, Prof?
Eugene, I don't see Prof. I think we may have lost him. Let's get him back. Prof, can you hear us now? You seem to be muted. Prof, can you hear us? Hi, everybody. Professor Msi will be joining us shortly. Please just stay on. He's
va nous rejoindre aussitôt. Restez connectés pour attendre son arrivée.
He has had an internet issue, but he's sorting it out.
Il a eu des problèmes de connectivité, mais il est en train de régler ça.
Thank you.
Merci.
Hello, colleagues. As Professor Msi joins, you can keep information coming in the chat room of your expectations of this session so that we don't
écrire dans le code de conversation vos attentes pour
quiet
cette
completely,
session.
but he's joining shortly. He's changing from one
Viser
internet
le
source to another.
silence. Il est en train de bouger donc d'une connexion d'une source de connexion à une autre.
You can also tell us where you are joining from and what you do, and then
Vous pouvez aussi écrire là où vous travaillez et ce que vous faites, quel est votre rôle.
Ruth, I can see your hand is up. Do you want to say something? Ruth, I've given you ability to talk. You can unmute and talk. I see your hand is up.
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, are you getting me?
Yes, we are getting you now.
Hello. Oh, sorry, but I think the network is very weak.
Okay, let's sort out the issue.
Oh, I don't know if it will be your network or it is our internet.
I think
My
maybe
name is Bang. I'm
black.
from South Sudan, Jonglei State, working together with MSF OCA, which is MSF Bolan. Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Okay, let me now. Oh gosh, now I cannot get my slides.
Prof, if you go to your screen, your original screen, and you click on your PowerPoint, just click on the PowerPoint at the bottom.
That's what
I can see them.
Yes, okay. I'm getting my PowerPoints. Okay. Are we on now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Is that where we stopped hearing me, or should I go to the next slide?
I think you can start from there, Prof.
Okay. So let's start from the definition of bereavement. In children, that grief is a psychological reaction of the survivor following a loss. It's a state of being deprived of someone by death. Grieving is a subjective feeling precipitated by the death of a loved one. But mourning is the process by which grief is resolved. So what we're going to be talking about is really how children grieve, which is the mourning process in children. But children, like adults, grieve following a loss. However, the child's state of bereavement depends on their developmental stage, which means their age. And grieving is a combination of two processes: the separation distress, which is the yearning, crying, searching, and loneliness, and the emotional distress, the disbelief, anger, emptiness, sadness. Now, Kubler-Ross described in adults the stages of grief, which is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But in children, this will depend on their developmental stage, which means their intellectual development. And this was best described by Piaget, and I thought we should understand it so that we can understand how children grieve. That from 0 to 2 years is called the sensorimotor stage, where children only understand space, what they see, touch, or feel, or hear, and it is called the period of object permanence. Once the object is there, they will understand it. But 3 to 4 years, they begin the pre-operational stage, whereby they begin to appreciate wholeness, and therefore interactive play, and self-regulation, and imitations, and the beginnings of verbal expression, and feelings of emotions, expressing emotions. But at that stage, they feel everything is alive, whether inanimate or living, they cannot differentiate that. So they'll talk to their toys as if they are alive. Then 5 to 10 years is the stage of concrete operations, whereby children begin to understand that there are laws and rules in society, that there's order, they begin to quantify things, and that there is continuity, and that things come and go. So they begin to see that life can go, and death can occur, and that when death occurs, it is final. So that means that in their grieving process, they begin to put that in their thinking. By 11 years to 12 years, they begin abstract reasoning and thinking. So they begin to appreciate things like spirituality, religion, government, their self-consciousness, and their life strategy. Now, with that background, we have to appreciate something else called bonding or attachment. Bonding is the attachment of a child to the mother or primary caregiver, all givers, all those around them, and has 3 aspects. For example, the physical bonding, which is usually visual, and we see that in children with the touch, smell, body, skin-to-skin contact. But there's also the physical or the psychological bonding, which is emotional, and then the social bonding, which is making relationships with others, and sometimes this goes on to last for a lifetime. So it means losses which occur in children will disrupt this attachment in children when there's a death, and that's where problems begin to come. Psychopathology, that's when they begin to develop disorders like attachment disorder, separation anxiety, and depression. But the symptoms which the child is going to get in the bereavement are going to depend on the age of the child as defined by Piaget, and also on the availability of supports in their life. So what's the grieving child? As we have said, grief in children depends on their age-related intellectual ability and their emotional development, and therefore abstraction. Children of less than 5 years of age are in what we call the animalistic stage. They liken death to sleeping. They can't understand that death is final. But as they go 5 to 10 years old, which is the Piaget's complete operation stage, they begin to feel a sense of mortality, and therefore a non-reversal of that which has happened. So fear reactions begin to come into them. They begin to fear that their parents could die, or their caregivers, and therefore abandon them forever, or that they also can die and be separated from their parents or loved ones. By puberty, children begin to conceptualize death as being universal, inevitable, irreversible, and final. So the death therefore becomes an abandonment, and will create some kind of separation anxiety in children. The children view death as being abandoned, and therefore generating fear in themselves. So it means that separating children from their mothers after the loved one has gone becomes even more traumatic. And they realize that sickness and treatment, sickness may rob them of their loved ones. So they may go through alternating stages of grieving, which is fear, despair, rage, bitterness, and finally depression. And we have to know in our decision-making process that as we relate to the children, that to explain to them death, depending on their ages. So what is mourning in children? We have talked about bonding, the process by which children are attached to parents or caregivers. Death disrupts attachment. So the mourning process in a grieving child resembles that seen as being separated from their primary caregiver, and to go through stages. And we see it in children. They begin by protesting, which in younger children is seen as crying, yearning for the deceased parent, asking to be near them. Then as the process continues and they don't see them, they begin to despair and to lose hope that they may never see their parent again. They may begin to withdraw. The crying from being continuous becomes intermittent. They may become apathetic, and that's when depression begins to set in. And then we see this thing as detachment. The child relinquishes that emotional attachment to the lost one, and it begins to reawaken to the surroundings and to develop new interests and new attachments. This is very important for us to understand. Because when children mourn as they bereave, they may develop depression. And we have seen this especially where there are no replacement adults to replace the lost one. In other words, when they have no support systems. The children become very anxious in behavior. They protest with intense crying and struggling. Then they despair, becoming totally helpless and hopeless, and the crying just becomes monotonous. They may become profoundly depressed with the social detachment and withdrawn, and sometimes they just stare. And it begins to impair on their survival. For example, they may fail to eat, and we may see failure to thrive in children, which may result in their stunting and wasting. They become preoccupied with inanimate objects or their own body parts, including playing with genitalia. They may even play with their feces and urine. They may develop other behaviors like head banging and rocking and other stereotypical movements. Because of this failure to eat, as they're bereaving, they may go into malnutrition, which can be quite severe sometimes, to the point of being marasmic or getting kwashiorkor, and then developing lowered immunity and getting infections, which may cause death. Now, usually in certain practices, like taking children to live with grandparents or away from their parents, we sometimes see some of these things developing, and children therefore begin to develop these nutritional problems. So as clinicians, we need to recognize and encourage the need to find an immediate replacement for a lost loved one. In other words, after a death, as the child begins to withdraw, you need to put in another adult onto whom they can attach. So the child then transfers this love, which was to the lost parent or to the lost individual caregiver, onto the new one. If this does not happen, the child then begins to develop these pathologies of anxiety, depression, loss of trust, and they may get behavior disorders in older children, like acting out, protesting, antagonistic behavior, and oppositional behavior, sometimes suicidal behavior. Whether or not children should attend funerals begins coming as a question, because some people say if you make them attend funerals, it may be very traumatic to them. But sometimes they need to understand this, especially as they get older, so that they can let go and begin to attend, to attach to other adult figures. But for us in psychology, we say that encouraging children to attend funerals is very important so that it can dispel their fears, their anxiety, it demystifies the occasion and their fantasy world, and then they begin to accept it, depending on the culture, context that they have given them. Sometimes you've heard people saying, mother or father has gone to heaven and we shall join them there. You know, these are things that can be taught to children so that they don't feel this constant fear and anxiety. I have to emphasize that it's always important not to abandon children during the grieving period, because they need to transfer their emotions onto another caregiver who should be available. Otherwise, the mourning becomes pathological, which is what we are going to talk about. Pathological bereavement in children happens especially where there have been sudden unexpected deaths and they can't understand this loss, or where there are no supports or no new adults whom to attach to, or where the death has followed horrific situations like murder in their presence, or traumatic situations, or very severe accidents, or prolonged illnesses. We are going to give you examples of this later on in the presentation. So examples of pathological bereavement include delayed grief, prolonged excessive grief, developing very severe depression, which in children we call anacretic depression, failure to thrive, having suicidal ideation, or some older children getting psychotic symptoms, and some may even get things like substance abuse. Now, I thought I would like to talk to you about what I've seen in children who have been massively grieved by seeing mass deaths, as we saw in AIDS orphans, or traumatized children, or in child soldiers, abducted children, or in those children who are always threatened and they get things like mass hysteria. And I will talk also about nodding syndrome, which we saw in Uganda. Look at these children. These are children from northern Uganda, displaced by war, have lost parents, have lost their attachment figures, and they were put into camps. And as you see, their curious faces, their depressed faces, and they went on to develop very serious problems. For example, nodding syndrome. This was in our Kwan camp in northern Uganda. And when we went there, you certainly saw a lot of depression and detachment in these children. As you begin to closely look at them, you see that some of them are not even responsive to the environment. Their thinking is elsewhere. Then we saw these other children who were AIDS orphans, who had lost their parents, sometimes their grandparents, and they were living on their own in sibling-headed households. This was one school where they were, it was called Hope. And I remember these children, they would not sleep at night and they would be mourning and wailing. And then they were being told that their nightmares were ghosts of their parents who had died, and they were visiting them. To deal with that became quite problematic. And we are going to talk about how to deal with such mass losses and such mass grievances or grieving as happened in these children. So, what is prevention intervention for bereaving children? One, we have to know that even where there is family support, some children do not recover on their own, and they will need some kind of intervention to help them. And this is when we need to call in mental health professionals trained in evidence-based grief therapy to help these children. And there are a number of these therapies which we shall see to help children who are bereaving, depending on their age. But we must remember that each child's loss depends on the nature of how they lost that one, on the timing as to when it happened in their age of development, and whether or not they have faced other losses in the past, and what caused the loss. For example, shooting a parent in front of a child is a different type of loss from a child losing a parent through a chronic illness like HIV/AIDS. Families or caregivers should always ask to be referred for counseling for bereavement of their children. They can ask this from their pediatricians, from their family doctors, or from their school counselors, or from clergy, to be referred in case they begin to see that the child is beginning to develop problems as a result of the loss. But whenever possible, grieving children should never be separated from their primary caregiver, if that's not the one who is lost. For example, if a child loses a father, they should never be separated from their mother. If a child has lost a mother, they should not be separated from their father. This is very important because these primary caregivers are the ones onto whom the children had bonded to in the first place. So what are the effective bereavement treatments that we can see? One is grief-focused cognitive behavior therapy. This is important for all the children. For younger children, they have not yet developed the ability in which to abstract and in which to be able to understand intellectually what is happening to them. So in those children, we do what we call family therapy. We give them therapy together with their family members who are remaining, whom they haven't lost. And we do it in the form of play therapy, so that the children can be encouraged to attach to those other adults or caregivers who are living. And they soon will forget the other whom they have lost, because at that early age of 0 to 2 or 0 to 5, they have not yet formed the intellectual ability to be able to emotionally remember the attachments, the ones that they have lost. Then we have what we call filial therapy. This is therapy that enhances the child-parent attachment and relationship, especially after one of the parents has died. Then you encourage attachment to the new one of the new caregiver or to step parent that has come into your life. Play therapy is very important for younger children and preschool children because, as you have said, they have not yet reached that stage of concrete operations to be able to make relationship bonds, but they relate to the now and then. Also in younger children is what we call sand therapy, or we give them what we call sand therapy. This is where you have a sand pit in which you put toys in which they can play and begin to fantasize as they relate to their new attachment figures. As they become older, same primary school, you can introduce art therapy, where they will draw pictures which really portray their emotional feelings. And with that, you can begin to help them to overcome the emotion of loss which they have experienced. Most importantly is family reunification. In other words, children after a loss should not just be given away to other caretakers. We should try to make a family reunification as much as possible to at least one of the primary caregivers or one of the remaining parents whom they are going to attach. Sometimes we have seen children who have been so grieved that they go on to develop major disorders like depression, very severe depression, and critical depression. And I have seen this in my practice, whereby they literally waste away and are not going to get better until some kind of pharmacotherapy, like an antidepressant, is given to them. I saw this a lot in children who were bereaved as a result of AIDS, the AIDS orphans, and also in those whose lives, whose attachment systems were disrupted by war, especially in northern Uganda, who were deprived of the loss of their parents whom had been killed. So, I'm sorry this presentation has been a bit disrupted, and I had to rush a little bit because of the internet disturbance that we had. I'll be able to answer any questions which you may have, especially in areas that I have not emphasized very much for lack of adequate time. Thank you.
Professor, thank you very much for the excellent presentation. I'll now welcome questions and answers from the audience. And I already have one question. The question is about the dreams that these children had. Is it real that it is spirits of their parents? What exactly is it and how can it be managed? Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I wanted to elaborate a lot on that. Children dream and they have fantasies and they develop anxieties and fears and they have monsters which they feel are going to take them the way they took away their loved one. So you have to replace those dreams with pleasant dreams. And the way we do that is to devise play so that they have nicer things to dream about. Hence, the importance of play therapy. I'll give an example of those orphaned children in Rakai district who are in a school, an orphan school, who are having very bad nightmares. People were coming to them and telling them to pray and telling them to do all kinds of sacrifices to dead parents and stuff like that. But really what I did after seeing them, and many of them were very badly bereaved, I constructed a playground and put there a soccer, football pitch, and a sports pitch, and a netball pitch. And I brought balls, and I made teams. And then we put in a drama club with the drums, and they began playing and competing. And within a month, all those dreams had gone away. And the children were happy, and were having pleasant dreams, and the pathological bereavement had turned over now into something. In fact, these children went on to win national awards. I think the netball, primary school netball cup was won by a school in Rakai district. That was that school. So play therapy is the way to deal with that. Not counseling, not talking to them. They haven't yet developed the intellectual ability to understand counseling or prayer or other things that they get told. No. You do concrete things because they're at the stage of concrete operations.
Thank you very much, Prof. That is very informative. Many of us think about counseling instead of giving children space and just offering them some room to play. And then we also have another question. How can one assist when a child who has lost a mother is said to talk to herself as if she's actually talking to her mother? And that's a question from Eunice from Zimbabwe.
Yes, very interesting question. Again, like I said, we didn't have too much time to elaborate because of the interruption. Kids fantasize, and a lot of their fancy or fantasizing is related to what they see in their environment. The lost mother was the most important person they had bonded to and therefore attached to. So they'll keep talking to them. They don't see death as final. To them, death, living things and non-living things are the same. In fact, if you see very young children who are brought to the dead body of the lost one, they'll keep talking to them. In war situations or in earthquake victims, for example, in Turkey, some children were found who were still sucking on the breast of their dead mother. We have also seen it in this country, in war situations, whereby they will come, they cannot know that this mother is dead. So they'll keep talking to them in their thinking, in their fantasies, because they have not yet come to that stage of realizing that death is final, irreversible, it has happened. That's when you introduce play. Also, interestingly, children are able to attach to new attachment figures. So when you bring in a new mother, or a new father, a new caregiver, they attach to that and they begin to form new relationships.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that response. We have another question from Edwina, based in Ghana. And she asks, how best can we manage children aged 5 to 13 who seem to be battling multiple losses? They've lost their father to complications of diabetes and may shortly face the death of their mother due to cancer. What should the palliative care team do? They are managing these children remotely.
Remote management is difficult for children who have not yet gone through the developmental stage or being able to carry that memory in their heads. But children who are reaching the age of 12, 13, 14 are going over now to that other stage of formal operations, and those can actually be talked to. But those who are younger have to be managed concretely through introducing new caretakers and encouraging attachment to new caretakers. But those who are older can be helped through verbalizations and talking to them, or talk therapy.
Prof, we have somebody also from South Sudan asking that, what do you do if these spirits keep coming in the night?
That's what I'm... By the way, I'll tell you another story about spirits too. Again, which I saw in my practice. There was war in northern Uganda, as there has been in South Sudan. And we saw children who in schools, especially boarding schools, where multiple deaths had happened due to war, and they had not actually buried their relatives, getting mass hysteric attacks. They used to call them demon attack diseases. What we did was to actually go through the practicality of saying burials of people who had already died. There was a mass grave, and we reburied by putting more soil on them and constructing a mass grave and going through traditional rituals as well as religious rituals of funeral making to have closure so that the spirits could rest. The children related to that culturally and were able to relax. Now, in the Rakai district, and that's why I talked about this, we introduced play, which took over. So they began to dream about what the contestations in the games had become, how the scores, how so-and-so had run so well, how so-and-so had played the ball, how they had kicked this, the songs they had sung, the dances they had made. That's what replaced the nightmares, which they are calling spirits. They are not spirits in the sense of being a spirit. Scientifically, spirits don't exist, but the dreams, the bad dreams do exist, and we have to replace them with pleasant ones. And that's why we introduce play therapy, sound therapy, and interactive play therapy with the children, so that they begin to replace them with other things in their minds.
Yes, the questions are still very many.
Yes,
Bang,
yes,
there is one, is nodding syndrome due to complication of grief? That's from Laka Joan.
Laka, I'll tell you one thing, that whoever has tried to look for an organic cause for nodding syndrome failed. The only thing that did nodding syndrome was disbanding camps, letting children go back to their families, feeding them well, and attack and reestablish attachments. When we did, as psychiatrists, our research in nodding syndrome, we found that 99%, almost 100% of nodding syndrome children had been severely traumatized, had lost significant others, either parents or siblings, in visually seeing them being abducted or killed or shot or cut up, and hence developing a very severe depression in their bereavement, which they could not overcome. And there were no toxins there, there were no deprivations, there were no infections there, there was no psychiatrisis in them. And the only therapy that we could give was psychotherapy, play therapy, and antidepressants in some of them who were so severely depressed. And good feeding for those who have been malnourished, because in the IDP camps, they didn't have enough to eat. By the way, in South Sudan, when we went there, we found that there was no nodding syndrome in the cattle keeping groups because of good nutrition there and the tendency to always have animals together, which children also have made some attachments to. But we saw it in agricultural communities where where there was not enough food and where there was no such closeness in terms of relationships or relating. So the answer to that is that there's no single answer for nodding syndrome, but it should be seen in terms of trauma, death, and loss, and developing traumatic syndromes and depression, as well as food deprivations.
And then we have a question from Bang Bol Reith from South Sudan. How can we convince a child that lost his or all her family?
I didn't understand the question. How can we convince a child
that you've lost it all, you've lost everything, your family
yes.
and everything?
Yes, depending on the age of the child, it's very important to remember those Piaget's stages. Young children don't try that because they won't understand it. After age 5 to 10, you can begin to explain it. After age 10, say 11, 12, yes, you can tell them that, because then they have come to the stage of concrete formal operations. But in the earlier times, you can't explain that. The only thing you can do, they understand, is what is there. You can only bring new attachments so that they forget about the other ones and attach the new ones. So depending on the age of the child, you explain those things differently. But the younger, the less the verbal explanation, the more you introduce what is concretely available.
And then we have a question from Upenyu Muteo. She's asking about how we can empower rural and urban communities on grief and bereavement for children, having lost all their families and they are in poverty.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that I brought up those examples. Those are the dilemmas we face in Africa, where we have had mass deaths from wars, from AIDS. Northern countries, European countries also had that after Second World War or after the World Wars. And we are seeing that now in Ukraine. Strictly speaking, the best that we can do is what is culturally acceptable to reestablish new attachments. Children can reattach to new caregivers and they can make new bonds and forget about the old ones. Older children will not be able to forget. Younger children will forget. And by younger children, I mean less than about 10 years old. Yes. Less than 7 years old.
And then we have another question from Philippine Kadengo. He's asking, how do we help a child undergoing grief due to loss of his upper limb through amputation?
Aha. That is another type of grief, the loss of a body part. Children, when they're younger, they adopt to physical incapacitations, knowing that that's the way they are. Children that are older, who are into formal operations, complete operations, realize that they have lost something and they had something. So those ones are the ones you give counseling therapy. But younger ones, you give them adaptations to do with what they have. Artificial limbs, crutches, so that they know that that's who they are, that's what they are. Many people who are crippled by polio went on to live emotionally stable lives, even had children, not depressed, because they accepted who they were. People who develop disorders at a later stage are the ones who develop the depressions. For example, mastectomies and stuff like that. So the older the child, the more likely they respond to psychotherapy. The younger the child, the more they respond to play therapy and other concrete therapies.
And then we have a question for you.
I've lost you. You're muted.
From Jen White. How have you helped a child roughly aged 6 who thinks some bad behavior is caused by a parent's death?
We talked about that, but that's part of the pathological bereavement. 6 is that transitional stage. They are going into this 6 to 10 age group where we go to concrete operations. So it's a difficult time. You wonder whether to do play therapy or whether to do counseling therapy. I think you're going to use a mixture of the two. But the most important thing is to introduce another caring adult whom the child can bond and know that they have not been abandoned, and to introduce some security in the child so that they don't become very anxious.
Excellent, thank you. We seem to have very many questions. I don't know whether we'll answer all of them.
Let's try to answer some of them, and I'm very happy about this because
how can I help a child who is depressed due to a traumatic event of a loss of a loved one?
Yes, depression in children can be seen in terms of how they relate. For example, they may become socially withdrawn, they play less, they have nightmares, They may regress in their behaviors. For example, they may begin bedwetting again. They have neurotic symptoms like they may begin sucking their thumbs, and they may fail to eat and fail to thrive. In other words, stunting of growth. Once you begin to see this, then you understand that this child has depression, and they may have nightmares and night terrors. And that should trigger you to think, to knowing that indeed you're dealing with depression here, which sets in after loss.
Thank you, Prof. And then we have another question from Roselight, Hospice Africa, Uganda. There was a 5-year-old child who was told that the father had gone to be with God. So at one time, the boy attempted suicide to go and find his father. And her question is, how better could this have been communicated?
It becomes a difficult question because different religions and different cultures have taught different things to children. Scientifically, we say they have been told lies. So the Santa Clauses and tooth fairies and mice giving you money for teeth and stuff like that. It is very, very important to communicate to the child the reality of what has happened in concrete terms. You can give them hope that in the future, we shall join up also with them, that we shall find them there. But to tell them right now to go and look for them, it may be concretely interpreted by the child. Hence, the suicide attempt. That has been recorded before. Children wanting to die to join their parents. We have seen it in practice. I have seen it myself. It's because of what cultures and religions have taught these children. And the important thing is to tell them the reality of what has happened and to give them that one day we will also get there when our time comes.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. There is another interesting question from Upenyu Muteo, who says that how best can we help children on antiretroviral therapy who are spreading the virus to other children, and at the end, they end up being in need of grief and bereavement support?
I would like to know the age of those children who are spreading HIV to other children. That sounds like adolescents.
Yes, I guess so.
Yeah, those are older children who we have not quite addressed in this presentation, because adolescence has its own behavioral problems that are very different from younger children. But the important thing is to give them concrete verbal counseling and to tell them about the danger of what they're doing, and to taking steps like adults to stop them from spreading the virus, including, I don't want to call it punishment, but negative motivation. In other words, there's consequences to the behavior which they may be exhibiting.
Okay, thank you. And then we have another question from Dilamini from Swaziland. How can we help a child who has lost a sibling through an illness like cancer?
Again, it's the loss of a significant one. Again, depends on the bonding that had happened and the age of the child. Let me hope that this child is a bit older and therefore can understand that there has been a death. The important thing is to give them counseling to know that they themselves are not going to get that cancer and therefore die. So you introduce some kind of hope and security in the child. The other is to go through again the kind of therapies that we have gone through, depending on the age of the child. A younger child is certainly pre-operational stage, that is play therapy. Older children will begin to have the concrete psychotherapy or counseling or verbal talk. But younger children, you have to introduce play. And they play in fantasy. That's the way they are until the thought goes out of their head and they relate and attach to a new person or a new significant one.
Thank you. And then we have another question. How do you prepare children aged 6 to 10 for their mother's death?
I think that question we have addressed before. Is anticipatory grief. 6 to 10 is a difficult time because they are going away from they are beginning, by 10 years, they are beginning to enter the stage of formal operations. But 6 to 10, they're in concrete operations. So depending on their ability to understand what's going on. But it's not a good idea to hide the oncoming reality from the children. In other words, the mother is sick, is getting very sick, is getting weaker. The children should visit their mother and they begin to realize that their mother is getting sick and is getting sicker, and may die. And they explain the concept of death depending on their age. 6 to 10 is a big gap. At 6 years, they're young. At 10 years, they are almost entering adolescence. So depending on how they understand the world, but it's a difficult time. But anticipatory grief is difficult even for both adults, even in adults. But once the death has happened, then you begin the classic grief therapy, which we have gone through, because the adult ceases to be in their vicinity. And in the earlier stages, they are not visually there anymore.
So I want to also share some compliments for you, Professor Msisi. Our colleagues from South Sudan say thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. The need is huge and they look forward to more sessions. We have our colleagues from Eldoret, Kenya, Child Life Program. They also say thank you so much. We have requests that we set up a WhatsApp group. That is noted, those who have sent that through. Other thank you messages from Chitovu Mobile and several other participants. And I want us to answer one last question from Dr. Nahla Jaffa, who is currently in Egypt.
There's also one from Ethiopia. How can we go? There is a question from Ethiopia. I don't hear you, you're muted. But I don't know whether I could answer this one from Ethiopia first. A child who says that ARVs killed the father and mother and therefore refuses to take them. I think there we have to deal with, I'm assuming that that child is also HIV positive. We have to introduce a new caregiver in that child's life whom they can trust and who will be able to give them the support to take the ARVs. But Dr. Namisango, I seem to have lost you. There's a question you were asking. I don't hear you, you're muted. Maybe as Dr. Namisango is coming, if others are still on, I see a question from Nahla Gefa. What are the characteristics of nodding syndrome in addition to depression? Nodding syndrome was happening in children aged 3 to 18 years old who had been through war situations, who had been severely traumatized, and they failed to thrive, they failed to relate, and they may also have seizures, especially if they were subjected to infections that were untreated, like untreated cerebral malaria. Nodding syndrome has virtually disappeared now. It's no longer there. It is something that happened during that war situation. And I think that we can rest assured that it's not coming back unless if we go back into wars and IDP camps and deprive children of parental attachments. I think, is nodding syndrome a complication of grief? No, it's not a complication of grief. It was to show you something that was, I think, misnamed. It was a misnomer. It was, in my mind, it was failure to understand what happens to traumatized, grieving children with severe malnutrition. Let me see some other questions here. Dr. Namisango, if you are back, please join up. Somebody saying grieving children over their own impending death due to terminal illness from Kawempe Home Care. That's a very tough question, which we see on cancer wards. The most important thing is that they should be very close to their primary caregiver so that they can have support throughout and encouragement as they battle with terminal illness. Yes, Dr. Namisano, you're back. Go ahead. But I don't hear you.
I wonder whether Nahala's question was answered.
Yes, I did. I read it and I answered it.
Okay, and then there was a question from Chitovu Mobile.
Which said?
It's about how best to support children who experience, say, tragic losses of both parents who died in an accident. And they were going to visit the child, and the child is facing self-blame that they are the cause of the parents' demise.
Yeah, we try to answer that. We said it depends on the age of the child. The older child would certainly need talking to verbally and being supported. The younger child, and of course being told that they were not the cause of the death. Deaths occur in childhood, in adulthood, at any time, from any cause. They're inevitable and they will happen to all of us. The child should understand that. But younger children will probably not be able to understand those concepts. But older children need to be supported to understand that and not to blame themselves.
And then the issue of grief in children who are heading families where both parents passed on due to chronic illnesses such as HIV, cancer, or even COVID-19.
Yeah, I took some time to talk about that regarding the AIDS orphans that we saw in Rakai district and children, quotas, children on their own, possibly headed households. What we did in that context was to always pair them to foster care family, whereby we feel that in this household of theirs, but the foster care family, they can relate to that for security. And then to support the oldest of them, to care for them. But those were very difficult times because most of these children also had no immediate family members because of the AIDS epidemic. It had wiped out parents, sometimes grandparents at the same time. But we put in a social work team that used to visit them from time to time. I think if you Google Phoenix Children's Program in Rakai District, you will be able to see what we did with a number of those. And I'm glad to say that many of them actually benefited. They went to school, they grew up, some are even lecturers, or even doctors or engineers. Some had the best scores in Makerere University. I met some in my later years as grown-ups, and I could not believe what had happened. But to support them slowly, materially, and emotionally, so that they go through that stage, and not to be exploited by other adults, because many were abused. And some boys, unfortunately, went astray, and they became street children. Girls, some of them went astray and went to prostitution. But those are some of the dilemmas that you face with mass deaths in the community.
And we are getting to the top of the hour. We have one last question, that what should palliative care providers do for children who have failed to cope with the grief and bereavement?
That's the question. Yes, palliative care providers then become the support on whom these children will lean to. They have no one else. Constancy, being consistent there, showing that you are there for them, is what is going to become meaningful to them. Their biggest fear is abandonment, being abandoned and left. That's what creates the anxiety and the fear and perpetuates depression.
Thank you very much, Professor Musisi. This has been a great session, and we'll have another session on the 22nd of September. We plan to have clinical social workers on board as well. So colleagues, let's touch base again. I want to profoundly thank Professor Musisi for the generosity and sharing your time and knowledge with us, and to thank all the participants for tolerating us because we experienced a glitch. And we thank you for signing in to learn with us. And I want to wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Please feel free to leave at leisure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Namisango. I'll turn off. I'm very sorry for the glitch that happened, but that's the internet reality on the African continent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Attention. We really appreciate. And
Okay,
of course, we really need your support. We really need your support for South Sudan side. If you can turn your eye to our side.
Hello, JC, for